And it was a play about a very great pageant. It was a play about the movements of armies in England and the movements of armies in France, and a play about the court of England and the court of France and the king of England.
Old Hollywood looked golden on the outside. Movie palaces glowed, studio bosses sold dreams, and fan magazines promised perfect romances. But behind those glossy covers, many stars lived under a harsh rule: keep the public image respectable or lose everything. In a time when being openly gay or bisexual could end a career, some actors, directors, and artists entered marriages that worked more like contracts than love stories. These lavender marriages protected reputations, soothed studio fears, and kept the box office safe. The human cost, though, was heavy: quiet loneliness, hidden partners, and a lifetime of acting off camera. Oscar Wilde's story came before Hollywood, but his life shows what was at stake for public figures who didn't fit the rules. He married Constance Lloyd in 1884, and for a while they looked like a proper Victorian family with 2 sons and a social circle that admired his wit. His relationships with men, especially Lord Alfred Douglas, were an open secret in certain circles, and that truth eventually brought him into court. Convicted in 1895 and sentenced to hard labor, he was broken in health and reputation. Constance did what she could to protect the children and the legacy of his work, even changing her name and living abroad. Their marriage survived on paper until his death, but the damage was done. Society wanted a neat picture. Wilde paid with his life. Decades later, Hollywood refined that lesson into policy. Barbara Stanwyck and Robert Taylor were megastars whose lives, according to rumor, didn't match the straight romance their studio wanted to sell. The solution, people said, was simple: marry them. So they did in 1939. The wedding looked perfect in photos, but people close to the couple remembered distance, separate routines, and a chill even on the first night. The union lasted years because it worked for the studios and for their careers, not because it was tender. When it was over in 1951, the divorce felt like closing a deal that had finally served its purpose. Silent screen idol Rudolph Valentino lived through 2 marriages that fed the same machine. His first, to actress Jean Acker in 1919, collapsed almost as soon as it began. The wedding night reportedly ended with a locked door and a humiliated groom. The couple separated quickly and divorced a few years later. It was a glamorous match that fooled no one for long. The second marriage, to Natasha Rambova in 1923, looked like a stylish artistic alliance. She was strong-willed, brilliant with costumes and image, and very involved in his choices. That control and the constant talk about who they both really loved put pressure on the relationship. They separated by 1925. With Valentino, the public saw a heartthrob. Behind the scenes, they saw a man trapped in a world that turned his private life into a marketing copy. Judy Garland's love life was its own headline factory, but 2 marriages in particular are often discussed through the Lavender lens. Her brief marriage to actor Mark Herron in 1965 was highly public but short-lived. They separated after months and divorced not long after. Herron then settled back into a long-term relationship he had already shared with actor Henry Brandon. Earlier in Garland's life, her 1945 marriage to director Vincente Minnelli looked like a studio dream. A great star and a great stylist, both adored by MGM. They had a daughter, Liza, and for a time, the storybook picture held. But gossip never left them alone, and Minnelli's private world became part of Hollywood's whispered history. Together, these marriages show how a woman under constant pressure to look perfect on screen kept trying to build something stable in a business that used her image up. Niels Astor, the Swedish leading man with sculpted cheekbones and a magnetic gaze, married Vivian Duncan in 1930. The pairing seemed ideal for publicity. It produced a daughter, offered a shield against rumors, and then ended in divorce just 2 years later. Astor continued to work, but the momentum of his leading man path faded. In that era, Even a carefully arranged marriage could not always erase suspicions or silence quiet blacklists. Hollywood could turn fast when a man didn't fit the mold. On the stage and screen side, Alfred Lunt and Lynn Fontanne built one of the great acting partnerships of the 20th century. To audiences, they were the gold standard of married elegance. Behind that polished curtain, whispers followed them for decades. They never confirmed anything, never fought the gossip in public, and never let the rumors shake their work. The point of their partnership, on-stage brilliance, off-stage privacy, survived their entire lives. If theirs was a marriage of convenience, it was also a masterclass in control. Tallulah Bankhead took a different route. She was wild, witty, and open in private about her life with both men and women, but even she played the game when it helped. Her marriage to actor John Emery in 1937 lasted only a few years and produced no children. Friends believed it was a shield, a way to deflect the worst of the era's scrutiny. When it ended, Bankhead kept working and kept living on her own terms. But the lesson was clear. Even the freest spirit learned to pose for the picture from time to time. Composer Cole Porter, a Broadway and Hollywood giant, married Linda Lee Thomas in 1919. It was a true companionship, warmth, respect, and an elegant household, built around a shared understanding. He kept his private life with men behind a velvet rope. She kept the parties glittering and the doors open to the right people. They stayed together until her death in 1954. The songs he wrote, witty on the surface, aching underneath, tell the rest of the story. In a world that punished honesty, they built a home that allowed him to work, thrive, and survive. Cary Grant spent decades as the ultimate gentleman on screen. Off-screen, speculation followed him everywhere. His marriage to Diane Cannon in 1965 gave the public a happy domestic picture and brought a daughter, Jennifer. But the union was short, and the gossip about Grant's closeness with actor Randolph Scott, including claims later popularized in tell-all books, only grew louder with time. Grant never addressed it directly. He let the mystery do what it always did in Hollywood: sell tickets and keep strangers guessing. Rock Hudson's marriage to Phyllis Gates in 1955 is one of the most cited examples of studio-era management. As a new leading man, Hudson needed to look safely available for millions of female fans. Gates later said she loved him and did not fully grasp the truth when they wed. The marriage ended quickly. The industry protected Hudson for years, but when the truth began to surface, the same system that had built his image offered little protection for the man behind it. His private fight with illness in the 1980s changed public conversations forever. Charles Laughton, a towering actor with unmatched range, married Elsa Lanchester, who had her own brilliant career. Together they were witty, bookish, and formidable. For years, rumors said Laughton preferred men, and Lanchester's later writings hinted as much. Yet their marriage lasted decades and delivered stability, company, and creative support. It is a reminder that lavender didn't always mean cold. Sometimes it meant a bond that made life bearable in a cruel time. Janet Gaynor, America's first Best Actress Oscar winner, married famed costume designer Gilbert Adrian, known simply as Adrian, in 1939. The match looked glamorous and urbane. They had a son and built a refined life that suited both of their careers. Hollywood gossip always suggested the marriage offered each of them cover in a watchful town. Whatever the arrangement, it worked for years, and both continued to do memorable work while keeping their true private lives close. Laurence Olivier's first marriage, to actress Jill Esmond in 1930, belonged more to the British stage than Hollywood. But the machine that policed the image was the same. Rumors surrounded Esmond's sexuality, and Olivier's restless heart was no secret even then. Their union ended by 1940. The relationship read like a textbook case of a marriage that solved a public problem and created a private one. Jeanette MacDonald and Gene Raymond, two polished MGM names, married in 1937. Fans believed they were perfect together. charming, photogenic, and completely in tune. Behind the scenes, stories swirled for years that the pairing pleased the studio more than it pleased the couple. McDonald's intense partnership with Nelson Eddy, both professional and, according to some, romantic, fed the legend. Raymond, a respected actor and pilot, kept his life quiet. The marriage, whatever its inner truth, lasted decades, which shows how complex these unions could be. Tyrone Power and Annabella offered another glossy love story with unending whispers underneath. He was dashing and in demand, loved for swashbucklers and romances. She was a French star with her own glow. Friends and columnists alike traded rumors about both of their private lives. Their marriage in 1939 looked like a perfect solution for everyone who needed them to look like a conventional couple. They divorced after the war. Power remarried, stayed a symbol, and left behind a question the public never stopped asking: how much of his life was an act and how much was his own? Marlene Dietrich and Rudolf Sieber married in 1923 and never divorced, even as Dietrich became a global figure who openly enjoyed relationships with both men and women. Their marriage looked nothing like the wife-husband picture studios preferred, yet it functioned neatly as a shield. He lived largely in Europe, she lived mainly in hotels and film sets, and each accepted the other's life. It wasn't a love story in the standard sense. It was an agreement that let Dietrich be Dietrich, while the world told itself a simpler tale. Alfred Lunt and Lynn Fontanne showed how a Lavender arrangement, if that's what it was, could fuse with professional excellence so tightly that the private story never had to be told. Cole Porter and Linda Lee Thomas showed how deep friendship could make an impossible situation livable. Charles Laughton and Elsa Lanchester showed how a long marriage might contain truths outsiders only guessed at. And Rock Hudson's brief union with Phyllis Gates showed how a system could build a man into a myth and then leave him alone with the fallout. These marriages weren't all the same. Some were likely studio orders. Some were mutual solutions. Some were affectionate partnerships that simply could not be honest in public without destroying careers. Look across them, and a pattern appears. Studios managed public romance like any other department. Agents and bosses weighed risk and reward, arranged photo shoots, scheduled wedding announcements, and made sure fans had a story to hold on to. The stars, for their part, tried to carve out private spaces where they could breathe. Sometimes they found real companionship inside the bargain. Sometimes they found only a locked door on the wedding night and a long silence after. Barbara Stanwyck and Robert Taylor delivered box office safety, but never the warmth audiences imagined. Valentino tried twice and found that the image of a lover could not keep a marriage alive. Judy Garland kept searching for a stable home in an industry that never stopped watching. Cary Grant kept his poise while gossip did the rest. Janet Gaynor and Adrian crafted a refined haven that served them well. Laurence Olivier and Jill Esmond ended a mismatch with careers intact. Gene Raymond and Jeanette MacDonald lived out a long, careful truce. Tyrone Power and Annabella gave the public a fairy tale and then let it fade. Marlene Dietrich made her own rules and used a marriage as a roof under which those rules could stand. It is easy to judge these unions by modern standards, but they need to be seen in the world that made them. The law was cruel. The press could be vicious. Studio contracts contained morals clauses with teeth. A whisper could close doors. For many, a Lavender marriage was not only a career move, but a form of survival. It bought time. It protected partners. It paid for privacy in a currency only they truly understood. The stories of these 17 marriages are not just gossip from a distant age. They are a record of how a powerful industry shaped human lives. Quietly, forcefully, and often without mercy. They show how stars gave pieces of themselves to keep working, how love had to hide or bend, and how the people behind the posters learned to live in the shadows their own fame created. The films they made still play. The songs still float out of speakers. The faces still look luminous in black and white, but the truth behind the smiles tells a different tale, one of bargains, masks, and the high price of staying in the spotlight when the world demands a lie.